This video covers the urinary system and urine formation and is geared loosely towards the Irish Leaving Cert syllabus. So let's begin with the parts of the urinary system. There are 2 kidneys. Your kidneys are located in the abdominal cavity, so if you're asked for their location, just say the abdominal cavity. The kidneys are organs of excretion, so they're involved in the removal of metabolic waste which was made as a result of your chemical reactions, so it was made in the body. The kidneys are also involved in osmoregulation. This is controlling the water content of the body. A duct, known as the urethra, leaves each kidney and connects them with the bladder. The bladder is just a muscular bag which stores urine. Urine exits the bladder through the urethra, another duct. The urinary system is all to do with filtering the blood and removing waste, so let's go into the blood vessels connected with the urinary system. The main arteries leading into the kidneys actually branch from the aorta, the largest artery in the body. The renal arteries branch from the aorta and lead into both kidneys. It's also important to note that the vena cava, the largest vein in the body, is directly linked with both kidneys. The renal veins leading out of both kidneys link directly with the vena cava. It's important to note that the blood going into the kidney in the renal arteries is not yet filtered, so it's very high in waste. And it's important to note that the blood leaving the kidneys in the renal veins has been filtered, and so the waste has been removed. Let's go into how urine is actually formed now. To know how urine is formed, you have to really know the structure of the kidney, so let's go over that now. The outermost region of the kidney is known as the cortex, and I always remember this by saying cortex, C for corner. Then in the middle of the kidney you have the medulla, M for middle. Then you have the renal pelvis, and this all leads to the urethra. The most important part of a kidney is the nephron. The nephron is known as the functional unit of the kidney, and there are approximately 1 million of these nephrons in each kidney. You really should be able to draw and label the nephron and to state what's taking place at each label. To understand what's taking place in the nephron and how it works, imagine the nephron is a twisty drinking straw with many holes all along it. So this twisty drinking straw, which is very leaky, is going to allow material or substances to pass out of it and back into the cells and ultimately the blood supply. Sitting into the top of the nephron is this bundle of capillaries known as the glomerulus, and the walls of the glomerulus are very porous. So the first real part of the nephron is Bowman's capsule. It's like a cup or a glass holding the glomerulus. A feature of Bowman's capsule is that its walls are very thin. They're only 1 cell thick. Going down from Bowman's capsule is the proximal convoluted tubule. If you were to look inside the proximal convoluted tubule, its walls would have many infoldings, many microvilli. These microvilli increase the surface area and so are facilitating reabsorption. A key feature of the walls of the proximal convoluted tubule is that the cells contain many mitochondria, and this is important because cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria, so lots of ATP will be made and used. As you leave the proximal convoluted tubule, you come to a loop, and it's known as the loop of Henle. Then there's the distal convoluted tubule, and finally there is the collecting duct, which ultimately leads to the urethra. Let's go through the formation of urine step by step. There are 3 stages in the formation of urine. There is filtration, reabsorption and secretion. Filtration takes place in the glomerulus. In fact, it's not just filtration, it's ultrafiltration. The afferent arteriole delivers blood into the glomerulus, and then it narrows into the efferent arteriole, and this narrowing increases the pressure. Turn on the tap and try to block off half of the spout with your thumb, and you'll see that the water soon squirts everywhere. This is what's happening in the glomerulus. So ultrafiltration is taking place in the glomerulus. It's to do with this increase in pressure, and also because the walls of the glomerulus are very thin and very porous. Many substances are therefore forced out of the glomerulus and drop into Bowman's capsule. The glomerular filtrate contains a lot of waste material, but it also contains a lot of useful substances which the body needs back. Glomerular filtrate contains a lot of water, and most of this is needed back by the body, so it needs to be reabsorbed. It also contains glucose, which is another useful substance which needs to be reabsorbed out of the nephron and taken back into the blood. Glomerular filtrate also contains salt, and some of this is also needed by the body and so needs to be reabsorbed. Glomerular filtrate also contains urea, formed in the liver from the breakdown of excess protein. Also some amino acids, and not forgetting vitamins. But it's very important to know what's not in the glomerular filtrate. Well, anything that's too big to fit out through the walls of the glomerulus, so blood cells and large plasma proteins are not in the glomerular filtrate. The next stage is reabsorption, so it's taking back all those useful materials which were filtered out in the glomerulus. Most reabsorption takes place at the proximal convoluted tubule, so by the time you pass by the proximal convoluted tubule, most of the job has been done. Most of the water has been reabsorbed by osmosis. All of the glucose and most of the salt, all the vitamins and the amino acids, these are all reabsorbed by either active transport or diffusion. So most reabsorption has been completed at the proximal convoluted tubule. The rest of the nephron just deals with water and salts, and it's really just fine-tuning. As you go down the loop of Henle, so the descending limb of the loop of Henle, water is reabsorbed by osmosis. As you go round the bend of the loop of Henle, at the ascending limb, the bottom of the ascending limb, salt is reabsorbed by diffusion, but as you go upwards, salt is reabsorbed by active transport. So the loop of Henle has a particular role. It really functions in water conservation. The ascending limb of the loop of Henle is involved in reabsorption of salt, so pumping salt out of the nephron, and when salt is pumped out, water follows later on. It's often noted that animals which live in hot climates have very long loop of Henles because they need to conserve a lot of water. So as you leave the loop of Henle, you go to the distal convoluted tubule where water is reabsorbed by osmosis, and then finally the collecting duct where water can also leave by osmosis. The last part of urine formation is secretion, where ions, particularly potassium and hydrogen ions, are dumped into the distal convoluted tubule. Secretion is connected with controlling the pH of the blood. So after filtration, reabsorption and secretion, you end up with urine, which leaves the collecting duct. Urine is mostly water, but it does contain urea and quantities of salt, and sometimes it can contain excess hormones and vitamins. So urine will leave the kidneys via the urethers and go to the bladder where it's stored before being expelled. Let's talk a little bit more about osmoregulation and how the kidney works in controlling the water content of the body. Say for example you're dehydrated, well this will be picked up by the hypothalamus in the brain. This results in the pituitary gland secreting antidiuretic hormone, ADH. This ADH will travel in the blood to the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, where it will act upon the walls of the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, making them more permeable to water, resulting in more water being reabsorbed. In your answer, the word more must be mentioned twice. What happens if you eat a diet high in salt? Well, you will produce a small volume of very concentrated urine. What happens if you drink too much water? In this case, you'll produce a very high volume of dilute urine. What happens if you eat a diet high in protein? Well, it will have no effect on the volume of urine produced, but the urine will have a high urea content. If you do encounter a question on the kidneys, please read the question very carefully. Is it asking you where in the nephron or where in the kidney does reabsorption or filtration take place? So where in the kidney does filtration happen? It takes place only in the cortex. Where in the kidney does reabsorption take place? It takes place in both the cortex and the medulla. This was only a summary of the urinary system. Please make sure you do past papers and you use your own textbook. Best of luck in your exams. Just to note that all the icons, the professional looking black and white pictures, are all from the Noun project. I'm a pro member, but I want to give a special recognition to the artists.